There are places on Earth where the boundary between our world and something else grows thin. Places where the dead outnumber the living, where screams echo through stone walls that have stood for centuries, where visitors report seeing things that shouldn't exist and feeling presences that refuse to leave. Some were built on ancient burial grounds, others became mass graves, and a few were constructed specifically to contain something that should never be released. Today, you're going to visit 7 of the most haunted, cursed, and forbidden locations in the world. Places where historians, paranormal investigators, and even scientists can't explain what happens within their walls. Because some locations don't just hold history, they hold something darker. And once you learn their stories, you'll understand why most of them are sealed, restricted, or avoided entirely. Welcome back to the Shadow Archives. We've explored creatures, symbols, and forbidden books. Today we map the geography of the supernatural, because certain places attract darkness, whether through tragedy, ritual, or something we don't yet understand. The 7 locations you're about to see are real. You can visit some of them. Others are permanently closed to the public. And a few, well, even if you could enter, you probably shouldn't. Each place holds layers of mystery, documented deaths, unexplained phenomena, and stories that locals still whisper about in hushed tones. This is just the beginning. Each location deserves its own investigation. But first, you need to know where the veil is thinnest. Subscribe if you're ready to explore the places others fear to go, because we're about to descend into the darkest corners of Europe. Our first location, Houska Castle, built in the 13th century in the forests of Czech Republic. But here's what makes it strange. It was built in the middle of nowhere. No nearby trade routes, no water source, no strategic military value, and strangest of all, it has no fortifications on the outside. All the defenses face inward. Why? Because according to legend, Houska Castle was built for one purpose, to seal a gateway to hell. Beneath the castle lies what locals called the bottomless pit, a hole in the ground so deep that when prisoners were lowered into it during construction, they came back screaming, aged decades in minutes, or didn't come back at all. The Duke who commissioned the castle offered pardons to prisoners if they agreed to be lowered into the pit and report what they found. The first prisoner descended and began screaming before he even reached the bottom. When they pulled him back up, his hair had turned white. He had aged 30 years, and he died within days, unable to speak about what he'd seen. After that, they stopped the experiments and built the castle directly over the hole. The chapel was placed at the center, directly above the pit, and its walls are covered in frescoes of demons, angels in battle, and a half-human, half-spider creature that appears nowhere else in Christian iconography. To this day, visitors report shadowy figures moving through halls, growling sounds from beneath the floor, sudden temperature drops, an overwhelming sense of dread in the chapel, the pit itself, sealed beneath stone and concrete centuries ago. But some things can't be contained forever. We'll investigate the full history of Houska and the creatures seen within it in a future episode. But next, a place where death arrived by the thousands. Place 2, Poveglia Island, a small island in the Venetian Lagoon, Italy. Abandoned, forbidden, and considered one of the most haunted places on Earth. Its history is a timeline of death. In the 14th century, when the Black Plague ravaged Europe, Venice used Poveglia as a quarantine island. Anyone showing symptoms was sent there to die. No exceptions. Entire families, children, the elderly. Over 160,000 people died on Poveglia during the plague years. Their bodies were burned in mass pits. The soil itself is mixed with human ash. But it gets darker. In 1922, a psychiatric hospital was built on the island. Patients reported hearing voices, seeing apparitions, and feeling invisible hands touching them. The staff dismissed it as delusion, until the hospital's chief physician began conducting experiments, lobotomies, tortures, patients strapped to beds and subjected to procedures without anesthesia. The doctor claimed he was treating them, but survivors said he was possessed, driven mad by the spirits of plague victims. Then, one night, the doctor threw himself from the hospital's bell tower. Witnesses say he didn't die on impact. He survived the fall and was suffocated by a ghostly fog that rose from the ground and entered his lungs. The hospital closed in 1968. The island was abandoned. Today, Poveglia is off limits. The Italian government forbids visits. Fishermen refuse to sail near it, claiming their nets pull up human bones. And the bell in the tower? It still rings, even though the bell was removed decades ago. Poveglia's full story, including the doctor's journal, will be covered in depth. But now, we descend underground. Place 3, the Catacombs of Paris. Beneath the streets of Paris lies a labyrinth of death, the Catacombs. 6 million skeletons arranged in walls stacked to the ceiling, stretching for 200 miles beneath the city. In the late 1700s, Paris had a problem. Its cemeteries were overflowing. Bodies were literally bursting out of the ground. The smell was unbearable. Disease was spreading. So the city made a decision: empty the graveyards and move the bones underground. For decades, workers carried cartloads of skeletons into the old limestone quarries beneath Paris and arranged them into what you see today: walls of femurs, rows of skulls, entire chambers built from human remains. The official tourist route covers less than 1% of the catacombs. The rest, the unmapped tunnels, are illegal to enter. But people do. Urban explorers, cataphiles, and thrill seekers descend into the restricted zones, and some never come back out. In 2004, police found a fully functioning underground cinema in the catacombs, complete with a screen, seating, and a stocked bar. When they returned the next day to investigate further, everything was gone. Only a note remained: "Do not try to find us." Visitors report voices whispering their names, the feeling of being followed, sudden panic attacks in certain chambers, seeing figures made of shadow dart between bones, and there are areas even the authorities won't enter. Sections where compasses spin wildly, where audio recordings pick up sounds that shouldn't exist. Because when you build a city for the living on top of a city for the dead remember. The unmapped sections and their secrets will be explored. But next, we visit a church that turned death into art. Place 4, Sedlec Ossuary, a small chapel in Kutna Hora, Czech Republic, also known as the Church of Bones. Inside, every surface is decorated with human skeletons, not hidden, not buried, displayed. Chandeliers made from every bone in the human body, pyramids of skulls, coats of arms spelled out in finger bones, garlands of femurs draping from the ceiling. 40,000 to 70,000 people turned into decor. It began in 1278 when an abbot brought soil from Jerusalem and scattered it across the cemetery, making it holy ground. Nobles from across Europe wanted to be buried there. The cemetery filled quickly. Then came the Black Plague and the Hussite Wars, mass graves. By the 1500s, the cemetery was overflowing, so the church hired a woodcarver named František Rindt to organize the bones. His solution? turned death into architecture. Rindt bleached the bones, sorted them, and created what you see today. He even signed his work in bones at the bottom right of the ossuary. Visitors describe the place as both beautiful and deeply disturbing. The sheer scale of death displayed so casually creates an atmosphere unlike anywhere else. But here's the question: why do this? What message is the church sending? Above the entrance, written in bones, is the phrase, "Memento mori," remember you will die. It's a reminder, death comes for everyone. Rich, poor, noble, peasant. Eventually, we all end up the same. Sedlec is open to the public. You can visit. But those who do say the experience stays with them, because you're not just looking at bones, you're looking at people who once lived, loved, and dreamed, just like you. The full story of František Rindt and the rituals performed there will be uncovered. But now, another chapel with a darker message. Place: 6 Leap Castle. The most haunted castle in Ireland, and possibly the most haunted building in the world. Its history is drenched in blood. Built in the 13th century, Leap Castle was home to the O'Carroll clan, a family notorious for violence, betrayal, and murder. Brother killed brother. Father killed son. The castle's halls ran red with family blood. The most infamous event occurred in the Bloody Chapel. During a family gathering, one brother, a priest, was conducting mass. Another brother drew a sword and murdered him at the altar, in front of the entire family. The priest's blood soaked into the stone, and it never washed out. But the Bloody Chapel isn't the worst part of Leap Castle. Beneath the castle lies the oubliette, a dungeon with a twist. Prisoners weren't just locked in. They were dropped through a trapdoor onto wooden spikes below, left to die slowly, impaled, starving, in complete darkness. When the oubliette was excavated in the 1900s, they found 3 cartloads of human remains, and that's when the hauntings intensified. Visitors and residents of Leap Castle report the smell of rotting flesh appearing suddenly. A creature called the Elemental, described as a black hunched figure with decomposing flesh and red eyes. Violent attacks, particularly on men, objects flying across rooms, voices, screams, and the sound of chains dragging. The current owners acknowledge the activity. They've lived with it for decades. Some spirits, they say, are harmless. Others are not. Leap Castle is privately owned. You can visit. But those who do often leave changed. Because some places don't just hold ghosts. They hold something older, darker, and angrier. Leap Castle's full investigation, including the identity of the Elemental, will come. But now, you know where the veil is thinnest. 7 places, 7 histories soaked in death, tragedy, and mystery. Some you can visit, some are sealed, and some you probably shouldn't enter, even if you could. But here's what connects them all. The veil between our world and whatever lies beyond is thin. Whether through accumulated death, ancient rituals, or something we don't yet understand, these locations are active. The question isn't whether something is there. The evidence, historical and paranormal, is overwhelming. The question is, what is there? And why won't it leave? That's what we'll explore in future episodes. Deep dives into each location, the entities within them, the rituals performed there, and the people who never made it out. In the next episode of the Shadow Archives, we return to Forbidden Knowledge, 5 books the church locked away, and you'll see why. If you're ready to explore the places where the living fear to go, subscribe and hit the bell. Drop a comment. Which location terrified you most? Or which one would you actually visit? The archives are open, the locations are waiting, and the veil is always thin. I'll see you in the next one.